Welcome to International School of Business and Research, ISBR, one of the top business schools in India, which takes pride for creating an atmosphere wherein both students and faculty can pursue boundless knowledge.
Good morning, one and all. I, Bhargavi Barua, Assistant Professor of ISBR Law College, welcome you all to today's webinar, Unfolding the Art of Research and Overview of Legal Research Methodologies. It is indeed a great pleasure to host a webinar in such times, and here I must thank the ISBR institution who has been organizing various programs through the online portal and giving us the opportunity to enhance our knowledge and stay connected. ISBR stands for International School of Business and Research, and from its inception has given a lot of importance to research and has been promoting it. Before going to the program, I would like to highlight the objectives of today's webinar. Firstly, it aims to reach the law students and provide valuable knowledge in the field of research. Secondly, through this webinar, students can have an idea how to use the various tools of research, which in turn will help them in drafting research paper and article. Thirdly, the scope of research has increased extensively. Research plays a very important role in every profession, but in legal profession, it is a key to success. So students should learn this art from a very early stage. Today we have with us a very special guest, Dr. Anita A. Patil, who have a wonderful experience in the field of research, and she will be helping us in unfolding the art of research by providing an overview of legal research and methodologies. Dr. Anita A. Patil is a renowned academician and a powerful orator with an experience of a decade. She has completed her bachelor's and master's in law with specialization in business and trade law from Karnataka University, Dharwad. She is also a gold medalist from her batch. She has qualified UGC NET GRF fellowship in the year 2012, and the same year she joined NLSIU. She has successfully completed her PhD from NLSIU in the year 2018. She has presented, published paper in various national and international seminars and contributed immensely in the field of academics. She is presently working in MS Ramaya College of Law as Associate Professor. ISBR takes immense pleasure to welcome you, ma'am, to today's webinar. We are overwhelmed to have you here. I am sure we will all have an enriching learning experience. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much for this warm welcome. And I thank ISBR for organizing such a wonderful program also. To start with, I would like to mainly tell all the students. I know the students might be from UG, PG, as well as a few students may, or the faculty may be also pursuing their PhD. Uh, as you know, ma'am has already said regarding how important the research is there for the, you know, to learn or to learn how to unfold the art of legal research. That is much more important in today's era. To just bring you all to the session, I would like to give few examples, or few things which you all might be uh, going through when you hear the word legal research. So because legal research is something which the students in the earliest stage may feel difficult to cope up with, especially those students who come from a science background, because I myself, I am from a science background. And to tell you very frankly, when I heard the word research for the first time, the word research, the first thing which comes to the student's mind is that, okay, something regarding any laboratory testing, something like that. That is the thing which comes to the student when he's in the first year, or in the initial years of his LLB. But here, when you see it through a different dimension, if you see it through a different perspective, through legal perspective, there's something which is more than what you just think of, laboratory testing and whatnot. So legal research is something which you have to explore in your entire 5 years, maybe not only in your graduation, post graduation, and also in your doctoral research. So this is something which you all ought to know, since the first year, guys. So the students who have here joined with regard to attending this legal research methodology, this is a very very important subject from the core. uh, Before going, I also want to mainly bring into certain things which the students might be facing a lot of times, because I myself have heard this coming across from when students share with me their difficulties with regard to legal methods or introduction to legal methods, where they face a lot of problems as to how exactly they have to go about it. So guys, let me tell you, legal method, or it might be research methodology subject in your post graduation, it is very very easy if you go through it from the basic. If you have left, or if you have not come across any session, any classes which is there relating to legal research methodology, if you have not attended, then it will be difficult for you to cope up in your further years. Like for example, in your first years, if that semester, if you have missed or something goes mishap in that semester, due to which you have not successfully completed, or you have not successfully understood the concepts, then it becomes very very difficult for you to cope up with your further semesters or further trimesters it might be from any national law universities. So here we need to know how exactly legal research methodology takes place, what are the keys, what are the components, what are the essentials which one needs to take care of before he writes any projects, any assignment of yours, which is also counted as per your academic scoring. So make sure you always keep that in mind, that whenever you're writing a projects, make sure this whatever we are going to deal in the further session now, make this a key point that you take care of all these things to a larger extent. Coming to the topic, just a second, I'll just move my, yeah. So what exactly is research? As I told, you might be feeling, as I told, a research might be something very generic term, where students from science background who come from 12 plus, they might be getting a presumption that research in law, how can it be possible? That too is the first thing which a student of science may feel. No doubt a commerce and art student may be able to relate, especially the art student may be able to relate to theories, concepts, doctrines, etc etc. But for a science student, it will be difficult for them to cope up with how can a law stream come up with a research, because for them the definition of research is something with regard to scientific laboratory testing. That is the definition as per the science student. But here, when you're taking research methodology, here we have to see that research can be you know it can be segregated into two words, that is search. You know what is search? That is nothing but a search which with regard to any of the topic, with regard to the knowledge, you are going to search for the more knowledge to get regarding that topic. Now we are going to research that in this particular subject, that is research methodology. It's we are going to once again search whatever has been found already, for especially for the knowledge. Now also the research, it also means that it is an inquiry. As I told, in law there's a lot of things we need to check, we need to inquire, we need to gain the knowledge, we need to inquire regarding facts, regarding the laws, regarding the decisions. So there's a lot of other dimensions to that. So it means that it's basically an inquiry. In short, in simple words, we can say that it is nothing but an inquiry which you're doing to a certain topic. For example, let me give you an example here. Like for example, if you all are students of LLB or postgraduate or whatever, whichever semester, you might be doing a certain project, right? Say for example, let it be the upcoming LGBT rights, or you can say transgender, the act which has just passed. So you have to do an inquiry as to why it has come, what exactly it is, and how exactly you're going to bring into the legal framework the rights of the transgender. Why exactly this act has come into force, or why this right has been given? Because see, just if you see the 1 decade old, we never recognized the transgender as the third gender. We know only male, female. That was the only thing we could see in the applications. But now, recently, after the NAS Foundation case, you saw that there's decriminalization of of same sex. If there's any, if there's it is said to be legitimate. Why is this a paradigm shift? Because what you have learned or what you have seen 5 years ago or 10 years ago, now it is not the same. How the society changes, so do the law. So basically, this is just an example I'm giving you, that research is nothing but an inquiry as to why this act has come, what was the reason for it to come, right? So you're making an inquiry. So this is an example I'm giving you how you have to do the research and asking as to why it came, how did it come. Because as you saw the content, we know NAS Foundation case has been running from years to years, and that was the reason it came. The decision also impacted for the legislature to come up with the act. So basically, research is nothing but an inquiry and investigation, and that investigation is mainly it's a systematic investigation which takes place. Now, an inquiry, as I told, it might be regarding facts, it might be regarding decision, it might be the ratio decidendi of the judgment, it might be anything with regard to the subject matter. Again, as I told, it is an art. It is an art to do a scientific, systematic research of an issue in specific. Now, let me be very clear here that the term specific relates to why. Now, the term specific, the reason I have put it in my slide is that now research means there's a whole lot of ocean with regard to research. Now, for example, if it is transgender, it might be transgender's rights. When we talk about domestic violence, when you talk about sexual harassment at workplace, you talk about any of the women's rights. No doubt it is there at international level. It no doubt it might be at a conventions are there, treaties are there. No doubt the laws, the domestic laws are there, but we are going to talk it very specifically. So whenever you think of a research, okay, whenever you take a topic for your semester projects or assignment, or for even if you're writing an article, a blog, a research paper, you should be very specific as to what exactly you're going to address. Now, if you're writing something on a woman's right, you can't say that a critical analysis of women's right in India, right? This is a topic which is very, very generic in nature. You have to be very, very specific. You have to carry on in a very systematic way as to what exactly your research relates to. And again, the third is that it should have an object. It should have a object to mainly find out the problems and mainly resolve them with solution, or to analyze the issues. Now, for example, let me take the same example. When you're a candidate, a researcher who is going to do a article, a project or an assignment on transgender, or even in case if it is you want to take something which is cropped up very recently, like a contemporary issues on the rights of the surrogacy mother. So we no doubt we have surrogacy, the laws are in place, but you're going to mainly highlight what are the flaws in the act, what are the flaws, what are the flaws, like for example, if it might be the definition clause, or it might be something regarding the penalty provisions in the transgender act. No doubt the act has come into force because of the history which happened, and due to the changes in the society which is brought. Surrogacy was not something which we which we accepted or which we saw a decade old. 10 years before, we never anticipate that something, surrogacy act or something like rights of the surrogacy mother will also be recognized, and a legal framework will also be designed for them. But now, as the society changes, so do the laws also. So here, for this research, you have to find the problems in the law, you have to find what are the solution, and also you have to analyze it critically. Guys, one more thing which I have always found, and I think many students are have to be aware of this, is that I have seen many projects which where students write, like for example, let it be competition law, consumer law, or any other law is concerned. You people, you have to take care that whenever you write a research paper or say project, you have to mainly see that you are not writing as it is, right? If you are writing as it is nothing but an information you are disseminating. You are not doing it critically. You have to mainly critically analyze the provisions. You have to critically tell about what is existing dissemination of the information. If you're just doing the dissemination of the information, I don't consider that as a project, I don't consider that as an article, or neither a research paper. So whenever you're writing your project also, because faculties who are mainly coming up, who are evaluating these such kind projects, will be very, very keen to know who is the good, having a good research as well as writing skill from the students. Because we never know, if your project is so good that it can also be a part of your publication. It can also be a part of your publication going further. If you have to improve, and if your faculties are very, very cordial and very, very supportive with regard to this, they can also give you some guidelines as to what can be improvised, how can it be updated, and that can be also published in any of the peer review journals. So please don't take this subject very, very lightly, because if you're just wanting for the sake of marks, you're just writing something, cut copy paste from any sites and giving it. I don't think so that is the way you have to carry forward for for the 5 years, because later on you will be the one who will be not able to cope up with once you graduate. So this is the right stage where you have to learn how exactly it is, and how you have to start finding the research in a proper manner. Now, as I told, research methodology, we saw what is research. Now, what is research methodology? You need to know what exactly the term defines. The term defines is nothing but, as I told, it is an inquiry. Yeah, you're going to check why is the surrogacy act came, why is the transgender act came, what is the reason. You will see the parliamentary debates, you will see the committee reports, the standing committee report, what was the reason for the legislature to come up with this act, right? You're going to do an inquiry in that in a very systematic way. In that way is nothing but the process or the method which you're going to use is research methodology, and the way you're going to conduct the research. Like, if you're going further, we will also see what kind of process will be indulged during the research. Now, you also should know what exactly is the difference between research method and research methodology. Now, as I told, research method is nothing but it is used synonymously with research techniques which will be used in your research work. But whereas at the same level, research methodology is the way you're going to carry on your work. You're going to say the process as to why, how you're going to do the process, how you're going to conduct your research. At the same time, it is it prevents as to what one has to be using in research, like what exactly you're going to do the research, how you're going to research, and the performance also is related to research method. Now, coming to very important research objective. Now, when you tell about the objective, I told you should be very, very specific. You can't go very generic, you can't go very general, or it should not be something which is broad in nature. So you have to identify the issues, you have to determine it, you have to evaluate. How do you evaluate? You have to evaluate it very critically, and not just like a as it is, like you can't say that okay, so and so law say and so, so and so. No, that is not the way the law students have to interpret that. You have to critically analyze that. If any provisions in India are having loopholes, you can always do a comprehensive or a comparative study where you can say that no, it had to include so and so also. Like, for example, let me take the act which has just come into force, like 20th, Consumer Protection Act 2009 is coming 19 is coming into force on 20th of this month, that is tomorrow, day after tomorrow, but it was notified on 17th. So if you see the earlier act, it did not have a definition as to who is a e-consumer or an online consumer. There was just a definition, section 21D, which defined about consumer. So here, when the new act came into force, you saw that it was mainly criticized by the criticized, or you can say it was critically evaluated, and that has been rectified in the new act, where e-consumer online transactions has come into the definitions of the act. Why? Again, it is because the dynamic nature of the society, and so do the laws have been changing. And also you have to evaluate or analyze the provisions. What is exactly the concept? As I told, research is done to identify issues relating to law and come with a better decisions or solutions. As I told, it might be loopholes in the law, it might be loopholes in the decisions, because it is not mandatory that every decision which is coming from the courts can be binding on the every time. Because see, as we saw, there is a paradigm shift we saw in 2019, when the Supreme Court came up with so many decisions which we never even imagined, right? So research can be done when we start doing a proper research, which systematically done, will also come up with a better decisions and solutions. And mainly it should be done with systematic way, and mainly to ascertain certain laws very specific on certain issues. And it is nothing but it is an inquiry into the law. Now, coming to when you're doing a legal research, as I told, and I think we all know that research is something which is very, very important for the law fraternity. Let it be lawyers, let it be law faculty, or let it be students, because unless you know how to do the research, you will not excel, neither during your years of your learning, that is your 5 years of your journey in your graduation or post graduation, or it might be doctoral studies also. Because if you don't know the basic, you can never excel with regard to your subject is concerned. So to make, why is the importance of this legal research so much? Because due to this research, there's you can make law, you can make law knowable, and also to resolve the conflicts, right? There's a lot of ambiguity sometimes in the acts. Sometimes the provision says something and another act says something provisions. So that can be resolved only when you start doing the projects. Like for example, let me give you an example here. For example, uh, when we have specific law and there's also a general law, and if there's any conflict between specific and general law, which act will be prevailing? So such kind of a topics which are much more very contemporary nature, that can be resolved only when you conduct a legal research. So, and also it is mainly to apply to specific problems and situations, right? And to find out the ambiguities. I told ambiguities, it means if there's no definition. If there's a definition, again it may be ambiguity between two laws. So in such kind cases, you have to properly you need legal research in such cases. Conduct a social audit of the law. It's nothing but, in case of a survey, if you want to find out why is the crime rate so much in Delhi, right? You have to conduct a proper research to understand why exactly the crime rate in Delhi has been increased. What is the reason for that? Critically look at the laws. As I told, critically, unless and until you take it very critically, there's no point in doing research. So students, I would like to mainly request here, in case of any projects you are doing, mainly focus on critical evaluation or critical analysis. Let it be in any topics your projects might be concerned. Legal research also brings in certainty to law, because unless and until you do the research, you cannot bring the certainty into the law, because you don't know the exactly though. Unless and until you do a systematic research, it cannot bring forth. Study law and its relationship with social order, welfare, and change. Now again, I told so many examples for this social order and welfare change, because it might be transgender rights, it might be domestic violence, it might be prohibition of sexual harassment at workplace, it might be any other crime rate. So this is all concerned with the society and the change which is brought into the society, right? And mainly the very very important which I have highlighted here is, because of this legal research, that has to contribute towards lawmaking, and also it has to suggest reforms in the law. Now, as I gave you an example, that surrogacy rights, transgender rights, which was not there initially. Now why is it come now? Why is it suddenly come up? That is only because of legal research. Because legal research, after legal constant legal research from so many years, the activists, the NGOs, the human rights while commissions, they have constantly done research. The academicians, the judiciary, everyone have contributed to bring law reforms in recognizing these rights. We never expected that something like protection of women in the in the workplace would come suddenly in 2013. But this has come only because it's a legal research which has contributed, and that legal research has contributed in lawmaking, and due to that there's a change in the and that has become that has mainly brought a reform in the law. Now, coming to very broad nature of the legal research, whenever you're doing a legal research, you need to know two broad ambits. One is qualitative and another is quantitative. So by the word itself, you might have already guessed what exactly it is. So basically, let me go to first qualitative. Now what is qualitative? Qualitative is nothing but when you're trying, like I think a majority of you all might be doing in your assignments and projects, where you mainly try to gain it with analyzing of data, with experience, or with logic. Like for example, you have already a set of uh, review of literature, you have already collected a lot of data, you have collected certain experience of interview of the renowned persons, right? It is very subjective in nature, and you can always use tools such as observations, interviews, or it might be biography also, or you're focusing only on certain group where it is very subjective in nature. And the importance of this qualitative legal research is that it is very accurate, because it is very subjective in nature. You know who are your who you know your participants, what are their views on so and so, right? So that is very subjective in nature. Whereas when you talk about quantitative legal research, it is nothing but totally data collection method. Now many of you all, whenever you all are doing an empirical study, you might be going under survey method, questionnaire method, it might be interview structured interview method. You know there's a lot of other subtitles in that. Like for example, it might be random sampling, or there are so many other things which I'll not go in detail because it's too much inside, too much in depth. So here in quantitative, you have to mainly understand that it is totally depending upon the your samples, your whatever the data which you're getting. It might be your statistics, it might be your graphs, it might be something which is coming in the form of experiments which you're social experiments which you're doing in the society. To classify kinds of research, there are many. Okay, there are many kinds of research. I have just included few researches. Mainly they are based on nature, the purpose, and the method. So these are the three criteria upon which the kinds of research has been classified. But again, these are the not exhaustive, so that means that these are not the only ones. And also this classification is not exclusive, but they overlap on each other, right? They overlap on each other because obviously under one research may collide with the other research. So for example, when I talk about doctrinal and empirical, you know what is doctrinal, right? It is nothing but you're mainly depending upon your primary and your secondary sources, right? That is doctrinal research, which doesn't has any practical component, or you can say practical survey depending upon that. But as whereas when you talk about empirical, you know that it is nothing but a field visit or field study, or through a field, you're going into the field and trying to explore the research. Descriptive analytic is nothing but in descriptive you're going to make research where you come out with theories, and analytical is something where you're going to analyze the provisions, you're going to analyze the doctrines, right? Fundamental and applied, again basic fundamental research which you're going to go into the basics, and applied is something which you're going to apply that doctrine into the research. Field research and laboratory, again sometimes it not only takes up the social experiments, but also the laboratory, the science experiments also. There's a lot of combination of social and the science research is concerned. Qualitative and quantitative, I have already explained you. Exploratory is nothing but where the researcher he himself will explore in the society, or it might be like a social experiments where he explores all the uh, you know uh, uh, he himself will be involved in that to conduct the research. Historical is nothing but it is mainly dwelling into the past history as to how the doctrines have been evolved from time to time. Leaving that apart, let's very being very specific to legal research. I told descriptive, analytic, quantitative, and qualitative, and conceptual, and empirical. So when we talk about these three, which is very relevant to your stream, that is doctrinal, non-doctrinal is also called as empirical, and comparative. Doctrinal, again, I think majority of yours in your projects might be relying on doctrinal legal research, because this is, I think, you might be feeling that this is something which is very easy to cope up with, because this is nothing but it mainly relies on the existing literature, whatever you have primary sources. Now what is primary sources? Your acts, your legislations, and your secondary sources also, where you come up with a project on your doctrinal legal research. But I would mainly emphasize you to come up with a non-doctrinal legal research, because now there's a paradigm shift. If you see any dissertations, if you see any doctrinals, or even nowadays the graduate students are doing really well when we talk about non-doctrinal or empirical study, because here you have a lot of scope to do a legal research. I would highly recommend all the students, the graduate students, to mainly try to inculcate to do something on non-doctrinal legal research. I'm not saying that you can do something very big, but let it be a small project also. And I think if you go and ask your your concerned course teacher, I think your course teacher of your concerned subject will be very happy to guide you as to how you have to conduct the empirical research, whether it is any of your contemporary topics. I think they will be very happy to hear from you that you're interested to do something on non-doctrinal or empirical legal research. uh, Coming to the third, that is comparative legal research. I told you before that it is nothing but when you're going to compare two different jurisdiction. Now what is two different jurisdiction? Comparative is nothing but when so for example, you are doing you are comparing the provisions in India, right? And you're saying that no, we don't have much legislature. For example, let me give you an example here. No doubt we all hear so many advertisements, okay, which are there on air, which is there on the television, which is there on the social media, which is there on everywhere. Any mode of communication you hear, there's no any time where there's no advertisements. So advertisements are to a larger extent. But we also know that the brand ambassadors who are coming for endorse the misleading advertisements. I think we all know about the Maggie issue which came up a couple of years back. We know Madhuri Dixit, Amitabh Bachchan, we saw Preeti Zinta, they were held liable for the brand ambassadors, because they were mainly promoting that Maggie is a healthy breakfast. This is the words which Madhuri Dixit had used in her advertisements, right? So when we talk about misleading advertisement in India, and when you if you're a researcher who is doing a study on that, why is misleading advertisement so openly done in Indian televisions or in any social media, but why are the laws not protecting the rights of the consumer, who are mainly exploited not only sociologically, psychologically, and also economically? Why are there no rights? But at the same time, when you compare it with US or UK or any developed countries, they have a very stringent laws. There's something called as public naming and shaming. Now what is this public naming and shaming? There is a organization in USA, that is federal FTP, Federal Trade Commission, which takes a lot of strict stringent action against these companies who come up with the misleading advertisements. If they get to know that whatever these advertisements, like for example, let's say in India, they say tall claims saying that taller, sharper, stronger, or say for example it is a 7 week challenge, you get slimmer in 7 days challenge. So something like this, which is, we know that it is so misleading, but there's no any proper legal framework done in India. But as well as when you do a comparative study in US, we know that FDP has a public naming and shaming, which they blacklist the company in public, and the company has to say an apology to the entire public in open forum or in open public. So you know that the laws in US are much more stringent when you compare it with India. So because of the laws, there's no any proper implementation in India. So in such cases, this isn't just an example I'm giving you for comparative legal research. So it might be any of your topics which you want to say that okay, India doesn't has law, and it doesn't, even if it has, no doubt broadcasting cable broadcasting act is there, no doubt press council act is there, but still how much do we know that they are properly implementing such advertisements coming on here? We see women obscene pictures coming in the advertisements, which is not at all required. But do our laws really address such issues? No. So in such topics, you can always do a comparative legal research. Coming to the research process. Now this is something which is important, friends, because here is something which you have to start with. So when you're talking about any research, the first thing which you have to keep it in mind is you have to formulation of the research problem. Now what is research problem? I have said you so many contemporary issues. Let it be your rights of the consumer with regard to misleading advertisements, it might be domestic violence, right, rights of the woman in domestic violence, workplace harassment at workplace, it might be transgender, it might be surrogacy. There are so many problems in the society, so you have to formulate a research problem based on that. Review of existing literature. Now this is another important thing which I think you all have to know, that is, whenever you're talking about a certain topic, like the whatever the examples which I gave, you have to do a proper literature review. Pastly, what are the existing literature available? Because as you're new to the law stream, you need to know what laws are there prevailing to your research topic. Then you have to set the objectives as to what are your objectives which you have to set forth, whether you're going to come up with a critical analysis, whether you're going to do a comparative analysis. So you have to set your objectives as to what exactly you're going to do. Formulation of hypothesis. Now what is hypothesis? I'll be taking it in the next stage. And also research design. Now research design is something which, in short, I can say it is nothing but your chapterization or your tentative chapters which you ought to do in your coming research. After that, you're going to collect the data, right? You are going to analyze it, and later you're going to interpret that, and then you are going to come up with the report. Basically, when you try to find a research problem, there are three major components, right? There are major three components which you have to look into. That is, first, what the researcher wants to know. So what you want to know, whether you want to see what are the rights of the surrogacy mother in other jurisdiction or in other developed countries, or what exactly you want to know. why a particular problem is being put, why you're going to do this problem. Why? Because if you see regarding transgender, why this is just an example I'm giving, why you're taking up this. You think that the legislature could have still more improvised the act before coming before the bill got into passed, and before coming it into a act. So why exactly, what exactly is the problem you want to put forth? Third, possibly alternative solutions to the problems. Now, for example, if I am doing a transgender projects, obviously I will look into the act. I want to look into the historical, what exactly happened when it first came in our foundation case, right? What are the legislatures and the judiciary doing in that? And when the bill was pending, what was the standing committee thinking when to come up with this act? And even after the act has come into force right now, what would be the solution in case of the flaws which they have already done, right? What are the flaws which is already there in the act, which I want to give the solution that they have to be making the changes in the act. Coming to the first one, research problem. So as I told, when you know the research problem, your half of your research is done. So it's well said that a well set research problem is half solved. So unless and until you know your research problem, you cannot go further. So if you're very clear with your research problem, half of your work is done. A researcher must know what is that he wants to know or he wants to do with his research. Research is for reaching the desired goal. So I want to give certain suggestions for the legislature that okay, you have to amend so and so provisions in transgender act, right? So I have to know what exactly is my goal to before going to do the research. Again, it depends on your interest, right? If you're something which you want to know something on intellectual property rights, cyber law, any other stream of the subjects, you can always do so. So again, it depends on your interest, your intellectual curiosity, your practicability, time frame, your urgency, your anticipation of the outcome. So unless you have all these things into place, you cannot move with your research. Now, what are the major key principles, or you can say guiding principles, you have to take care when you're doing a research, right? First, the problem should not be too broad, too narrow, vague, or uncertain. As I told very clearly that taking something on rights of women will not take you anywhere. But going very specific, whether you want to do on transgender, whether you want to take on surrogacy, you want to take on domestic violence, or you want to take on sexual harassment at workplace. So you have to be very, very specific what exactly you're going to do. The study should be significant and should have theoretical or practical value. Again, it should be very important. It should have a significance that it can be applied in the practical sense, or it might be a theoretical one also, but mainly it should have a significance for the study. The problem should be suitable and feasible for investigation, right? You want to, if you are doing something on domestic violence, obviously you have to see the feasibility of investigation. How many cases of domestic violence has been done from past 5 years, which is what are the crime records, right? You have to see that it should be feasible and the investigation can be carried. You can't take anything hypothetically which you cannot put it in the practical sense. The researcher has sufficient expertise and training to conduct the research. So you should be understanding that before you do the research, you should have a background study and you should have a proper training to do that research. The data planned for collection must be susceptible for analysis. So whatever you have collected the data, let it be an empirical study. You might have collected the records of how many from past 1 year so and so company have so many sexual harassment cases. So you should have a data to come up with an analysis. Okay, so and so company has a lot of sexual harassment cases. Why? What is the reason? Is it that the enforcement is not there? After this prohibition of sexual harassment at workplace, there is something called as ICC in every company which has more than 10 employees. They have to have a internal committee who takes care of any cases which comes before them with regard to sexual harassment. So whenever you're collecting a data, you should come up with the analysis. So it should be specifically that whatever you have collected the data, drawing you should be able to draw the conclusion with that data and come up with an analysis. The problem should not have been already overdone unless something new is envisaged. So it should not be like repeated. Now, for example, everyone, like if you're a postgraduate student, you would agree with me, like whenever you go for a topic for your dissertation, whenever you go to your guide, which topics you want to do, either you will be doing on mergers and acquisition, right? You might be doing corporate wheel, you might be doing something on intellectual property, copyright violation, or something like compulsory licensing. These are the things which have already been done again and again, and every year many students are doing. So select some topic which is very new, which has not been more done, like, oh, it's not overdone, or you have something new to come up with, rather than doing a duplication of the earlier work which is already done. Last is time and economy influence the choice of the problem, right? So you should not be in such a, what you can say, so in such a josh that you want to do certain such a research which is not done already, but you're taking up a new issue which is you don't have existing any literature also. So in such, if you're taking too much new which has nothing right now, it'll be difficult for you. And also the time and economy which you are going to put, like for example, if it is an empirical study, obviously you're going to put a lot of money into that, because it's a field visit, you have to travel, you have to commute, you have to there's a lot of money involved when you do an empirical study. So it all depends on the topic which you're doing. So whenever you're doing a research, all this 7 guiding principles have to be kept in mind before you do any proper legal research. Now, how to select the research topic? As I told, it should not be broad, it should narrow down to the area of the problem chosen. The state of the problem should be there, specifically. You have to understand the problem, and then once you're done with that, then you can make a pilot study. Now, what is pilot study? Is nothing but a brief study as to how you're going to do that. You're going to do the review of the existing literature, right? The works which has been already done on that. And if possible, you're going to have a intellectual interactions with the renowned persons in the same stream, like for example, any academician who has been an expertise in IPR or cyber law or artificial intelligence. So you're going to have an intellectual interaction with them. You're going to again reconsider the statement of problem, taking into account the time and resources. And later you're going to understand and define various terms which is used in the problem. Again, once you start doing research, there are stages where you have to again change, like, there'll be a lot of revisions happening in your research, because initially you might have thought something, but once you start interacting with your your samples, or you're conducting interviews, you will start rephasing your problems, and you will start becoming very specific, and there'll be a lot of clarity with your research. Now, coming to very, very important thing is hypothesis. I think the postgraduate students, if anyone is there, I think you will be agreeing with me here that hypothesis is something where many students find difficult, whether it might be phrasing their hypothesis, or it might be how exactly they have to come up with the statements of hypothesis. So what exactly is hypo means nothing but less than. Thesis is nothing but generally held view. So it means that hypothesis means less than generally held view. According to Good and Hat, who is an author of the research methodology, he says that it is a proportion which can be put to test to determine its validity, right? So it's a proportion is nothing but you have put certain terms which you're going to put that into test to mainly validate it or not validate it. You're mainly going to put that across, like let me give you an example. For example, when I told you an example regarding the crime rates in Delhi, or say it in Bangalore also. Why is the crime rate so much in Delhi or Bombay or Bangalore, right? When you try to analyze that, there should be two variables. Now, what are these variables? Are like a cause and effect relationship. Now, you need to know the cause to understand why is the result coming. Okay, effect, that is the effect. So you need to have two variables called as cause and effect relationship. I'll be taking that further. Before that, let us go to the characteristics of the hypothesis. So as I told, hypothesis should be very clear, very specific, and very precise. Now when I tell this, I should be knowing exactly what is my statement of problem, because unless and until you know your statement of problem, you will not be able to define your hypothesis. Hypothesis should be able to capable of being tested. It should have an empirical reference. As I told, empirical study, you should be able to test it. And also it should have a relationship between the variables, which should be compatible with the current knowledge in the area of concern of your research. It should be amenable to explanation, it should be easy to explain. And also it should have a logical consistency, right? Unless and until you have a logical consistency, your hypothesis, the way you're drafting your hypothesis may go wrong. And also it should be operationally defined. Now let me tell you very clearly, because this is the slide which I think many students may be having difficulty to understand, because it is very difficult. What are the difficulties where the students face while formulating the hypothesis. So mainly whenever you're trying to put a hypothesis, put it in the form of cause and effect relationship. Now, as I told, the crime rates are because the crime rates have increased because there's no proper implementation. So I'm telling you the cause is that is no proper implementation, and the effect is the crime rates. Because of no proper implementation of the law in Delhi, there's the effect is the crime rates of rape, right? So this is a cause and effect relationship, where I'm trying to give you an example that there are two variables, that is cause. For example, it might be because there's no proper implementation of the law, and effect is due to which the crime rates of rape have increased in Delhi. So there's a two variables. So you have to maintain these cause and effect relationship, and you have to frame your hypothesis. So again, what are the mainly difficulties? As I told, you need the absence of knowledge of a clear theoretical framework, right? Unless and until you have a knowledge on that topic, you will not be able to understand, or you will not be able to formulate your hypothesis. Second, there's a lack of ability to utilize the theoretical framework logically. You should be able to utilize that theoretical framework. Third, it is the failure to be acquainted with available research techniques, so as to be able to phrase the hypothesis properly. So in case if you fail to do so, you will be having difficulty in framing the hypothesis. Now, coming to research design, again guys, this is very very important, because unless and until you have a research design, your research is not completed. Because in short, I can say that research design is something like a blueprint of your entire research, right? Whenever you're starting with your project, your research paper, or your article, you need to know what are your research design. Or in case if you're doing your dissertation, or it might be your thesis, you should have a research design, a tentative research design it may be. So as I told, it is nothing but a blueprint for the research work, right? And as it is like an overall structure and the scheme of the study. So it might be something related to your what exactly you're going to do in the first chapter, second chapter, third chapter, conclusion, critical analysis. So whatever the flow may be, you have to put it in your research design, which mainly tells you about your entire structure. An outline of the research work, from framing a hypothesis to formulating chapters. So as I told, it will outline the entire research work, because it'll be easy for your guide or your course teacher, whoever it may be, it'll be easy for them to see the outline of your research. It must explain the process of research. Now, when I say process, it might be the way you're going to conduct, whether it is a doctrinal, whether it is an empirical, or any other process which you might be indulging to do your research. As I told, it is a tentative plan which you're going to execute for your research project, or it might be your assignment. So it is like a tentative. So whenever your topic is given to you by your guide or your course teacher, you always first try to put a tentative chapter, which is nothing but the research design. And also it can be said that it is a guide post for smooth execution of research work in the right direction. So whenever a teacher or your course teacher gives you a topic, the first thing which she will tell you, or he or she may tell you, is that come up with your chapterization. So in that, he or she will get an exactly an idea as to what all you'll be covering. And if any points or any chapters which has been not you have not included, they may either ask you to insert it, or if they think that it is too very vague, then they may ask you to be much more specific, and they may ask you to omit any chapters. Coming to research design, as I told, it will mainly identify research problem. Okay. And whenever you're doing a research design, okay, the first thing which you have to remember is that in your introduction chapter, you will be mainly coming with the identify research problem, right? Like for example, I give you so many examples with regard to surrogacy or transgender, or it might be women's domestic violence rights, or it might be sexual harassment at workplace. Any problem it may be, you have to identify the research problem first. You have to tell the significance of the study, why exactly this topic is important right now for you to come up with this study. Unless and until you put across the significance, and I've seen many students don't take this or don't write this significance of the study. Guys, mainly make sure, if you're writing any article or if you're writing any research proposals or research projects, mainly bring this component in your document, that you have to write the significance of the study. And also the next thing is contribution to the society. Now, contribution to the society, I may not say that you are going to contribute it overnight, but you're trying to put a legal framework or to bring a legal reform in the society. So that will be much more very impressive, that your research is something contributing to the society. Let it be even let it be in case of a legislative policy, or you're giving certain suggestions that the already act has come, but there are few loopholes in the provisions. So you have to bring this component in your research. Literature review, as I told, you're going to already whatever the literature is already available on the said topic, you're going to review that, and you're going to give your comments on that. Next is methodology. Now, guys, this is something which I have a lot of things to say for you, because I myself have found that many of my students are going wrong in this component, that is methodology. Now, sometimes students don't know which exactly footnote they have to follow, like the citation method, the mode of citation, they don't know exactly. So you need to be very very clear as to which mode of citation are you going to follow, whether you're going to follow blue book mode of citation, you're going to follow the ILI mode of citation, or you're going to follow the OSCULA. There are so many mode of citations, but you have to mainly make sure that you learn at least one thoroughly, which your college might have been suggested that you have to follow blue book, or whatever citation mode of citation are you supposed to follow. So mainly make sure you follow the citation method, the mode of citation. You have to mainly make sure you write the scope. Now, what is scope is nothing but the entire area where you're going to cover the topic. Like, for example, when I say women rights, it's a very vague topic, but when I streamline that to surrogacy mothers, I'm telling you what is my scope of research. I'm going to confine my research only to the surrogacy mothers' rights under the act. As well as you have to also make sure that you have to give your limitations. Now, when this comes into picture, like for example, when you're doing an empirical study on something related to surrogacy mothers' rights, or you have to say that you're going to streamline only to Bangalore, or you're going to see that only to a certain area, so that your research is very specific, that you have done a survey within Bangalore. So you have to put that across in your research, that you're limiting your responses or your samples within your whatever the scope or the limitation is. List of annexures, I think many students have all many times they skip it. That is your annexures with regard to, if you're done an empirical study, make sure you enclose all your observations, your interviews, or your the samples which you have taken, right? The annexures like list of abbreviations, list of cases, list of any other secondary sources which you might have taken. Make sure you put that across in your projects, which brings a lot of authenticity, right, when you are submitting your research. Collection of data is nothing but, as I told, you might have done a lot of empirical study like interview method, observations, surveys. You might have done it with Google Forms. So many things are there. You have to mainly make sure that you bring it into your research. You have to analyze it, and also you have to interpretation of data. Now, when you say analysis and interpretation, there are various forms. See, you can always take the help of a statistician. Like, I don't know, many of you all might be knowing or no, there are so many tools like SPSS, right? There are so many other tools where a statistician can help you. In case if it is your LLM dissertation, you can always take in help of a statistician for coming up with the analysis and interpret the data. These are all the software which the technology is helping the researchers to come up with the analysis and to interpret the data. And last is conclusion and recommendation. Now, conclusion and recommendation, always remember that conclusion and recommendations are very very important, because no doubt if it is a dissertation or thesis, if it goes for valuation, they may or they may not read. But introduction, conclusion, and recommendations are something which everyone reads, no matter whether it is a dissertation, it is a thesis, or whether it's a project. So make sure this is very very clear, precise, and up to the point. Yeah, this is again the research design importance. As I told, it shows the light as to how the it shows the light to show the right direction. It mainly signifies that, because as I told, research design is something which initially when you show it to your course teacher, she'll be able to guide you in the right direction. It maximizes the reality and minimize bias, and also subjective empirical wandering. So you know where exactly, you don't have to wander anywhere, because you know what is your streamline, and you're going only for those chapters. An efficient, appropriate, flexible research design is a prerequisite for any meaningful design. So you should be able to do it efficiently so that your research goes in a proper way. And also if it's properly designed, research design, if it properly is designed, then the results is in smallest error in the investigations and data. So unless and until you do a proper research design, and later if you find that there's that there's an error, or you can say there's something which component which you have left, you have to once again redo the work. So it's always important that you have to properly do that. Pauline V Eng, who's an author, he says that research design encompasses the following interrogatives. Now, what is this? Mainly when you're doing a research design, you have to ask these questions, like what is the study about, what is the nature of your data which you have collected, why is it made, okay, where the data is found, whether it is primary source or whether it is a secondary source, what are the techniques which you are used to collect it, right? When you collect it, how you're going to analyze it and how you're going to interpret it and later bring it into your reports or your research writing. When you say a good research design, you should mainly see that the two things, that is the dual purpose of optimum reliability and negligible errors have to be there, mainly seeing that when you're collecting any data. Again, the time frame, the availability, the nature of problem, the skills of the researcher of obtaining such data, it means these are the major factors which mainly influence while formulating your research designs. And another thing is that the research design cannot be a standard format for all the research problems. So as I told, research design may vary from person to person, and also research design may vary from topic to topic. So it's not always the standard form. Now, coming to the research, another very important tool, that is case study method. Now, case study method is nothing but it's a very widely accepted form of qualitative analysis, and it is a systematic way of research techniques which is used. It may be used for collecting the behavior patterns of certain group of people. Like for example, if you're doing a research on tribal people, so you're doing a case study method there, and it is mainly a in-depth study for certain social unit is concerned. So here also it was first introduced by Frederick Lee Play in his study on family budget, and Hedrick Spencer, he utilized this method, that is the case study method, while doing a comparative study of different cultures, right? Many times it is mainly used to see how, like for example, let me take a example where it might be used in a study of juvenile delinquency, or like for example in case of justice delivery system. So in case of such cases, a case study method can be used. And as I told, it is mainly specific to single unit, it is in depth, and it may take a longer time because you're going to specifically do a case study on certain units. Like it might be juvenile the offenders who might be there in the jail, prisoners rights, it might be tribal rights. So it takes a lot of time and a lot of complexity takes place when you're doing a case study. And also a complex factors is in given unit are completely studied, you cannot discontinue that, right? And there's a lot of the stress is on the qualitative approach and not on the quantitative approach. So here when you're doing a case study method, you should be very very precise as to, because you are doing a behavioral pattern on certain units. So it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of mutual interrelationship between the causal factors, and also a behavior pattern which you're studying is also brought into your case study. Now when you're collecting your data, after your collection of the data with tools, like it might be tools, I mean it might be interview, questionnaire, survey, or any other method you might be opting, you have to properly organize that data, right? After that you might be doing it with SPSS, you might be doing it with any other modes of excels or any other software which you might be using. You have to evaluate the data, make necessary deductions. So sometimes why I have put this across is that sometimes if I think I'm sure if anyone might have done empirical study, that sometimes there are huge loopholes when we take a questionnaire, when you're putting across, you may not be that sure, so you might have ticked it just like that. So unless and until you have to properly make certain deductions if that are not relevant. So a researcher also has to make sure that they may have deductions when you make an empirical study. Then later on, again once again analyze the data and then draw conclusions. Now, coming to the sources of the legal research, as I told, primary research, it is your legislatures, it's your case laws, it is your regulations, etc., which is mainly coming through us like a primary source. Secondary are nothing but the law commentaries, the reviews, the articles which you might have read on certain topics. Those are called as secondary sources. There are certain legal sources and non-legal sources, such as something like societal norms, institutional, procedural aspects. These are not that considered in real law perspective, but they are also a sort of source of legal research. Now, coming to the survey method. So as I told, survey method is very extensively used in social legal research, mainly to guide or to mainly do a research on a behavioral pattern of certain groups. And it is mainly used because it's very flexible, because if you want to find with when, like for example, I told you about the survey which you might have done on the why is the population so increasing, the survey, the why is the population census done. It is because you get to know what exactly are the behavioral pattern, what is the population, how many people are there in a family. That is the reason where they want to know why exactly the population is increasing, how much is the people in each family, what is their economical factor, what is their sociological factor. So any survey which you might have conducting, even in case if why exactly the crime rates is happening, or the domestic violence happening in in certain areas, so you can always do a survey. It is useful in formulating the hypothesis, or it in its advance to test the hypothesis. So whatever, as I told, hypothesis, it is because of the non implementation, due to which the crime rates have been increased. So you have to formulate and you have to put that to test whether implementation in Bihar is very pathetic, so that the crime rates in Bihar is increasing. So if you're putting a hypothesis, you have to put that to test, and you'll be able to put that later, come to the conclusion only after you do a survey, or you come up with your research. Carefully planning and execution is vital for the successful result of the survey. So again, as I told, it should be properly planned, it should be properly executed, and then the results of the survey will be done. Attention has to be paid on proper sample selection, constructing the questionnaires, and minimizing the errors. So you should be very, very careful. You can't put any random question to XYZ saying that, does your husband do any domestic violence at home? You can't do that. You can't say that. You have to be properly, putting it across in a very diplomatic and a very sober way to find your questionnaire. So I'm just giving you an example. Whenever you're going for an exam questionnaire or a survey method, you have to make sure that they are not direct in nature. It should be otherwise your any of your respondents will not be in a stage to to cooperate with you or to respond you. Now, coming to the very, very, very important stage, that is your research papers, your articles, and your blog. I'm sure many of your students might be participating in many. Now, I think after during this pandemic, I have seen a lot of brochures coming across with regard to writing blogs, writing research papers, and they are also giving a competition, national level competitions for best research paper or best article or even blog. Say, now, whenever you write a research paper, articles, or blog, kindly be very, very sure that don't take anything which is already very, very settled, right? You have to take something which is very contemporary in nature. Now, what do I mean by contemporary? Which is a gray area right now. Now, unless and until you take a gray area, trust me, your research, or even if you are writing any articles for any journals which you're sending, they will not accept it. So please be informed that unless and until you take a contemporary issue, your papers or your articles will not be accepted. So take something which is contemporary, which is current, which is happening, which is not settled, but you have certain suggestions because you have already read that in a comparative country. You already are aware of other jurisdiction, how exactly it is, and you can always say the best practices which is followed in other countries, and you can bring out your papers. Now, lastly, I would like to also say that what are the major challenges which a student, a researcher, or a faculty or a lawyer may face, unless if he's really involved in legal research. Firstly, as I told, dynamic society, and so do the dynamic laws. So first is, as I told, the society changes, and so do we have to adopt to the existing culture, and also we have to adopt or accept the laws which is coming, like for example, let it be surrogacy, let it be transgender, any of the laws which is coming. So you have to be updated. The research which you're doing needs a constant updation. You need to be updated with the law, which are the new act coming. Now, as I told, consumer protection act has come into force. It is going to be implemented from 20th of this July. You need to be updated so that in case if you want to write a blog on that, you can always do that. Research has broad scope and ambit, so need to be specific. As I told, if I have to be very doing a proper blog, you need to confine yourself and specifically write on what you're going to elaborate on that. Last but not the least, which is very very important, is copyright protection, plagiarism and piracy. Guys, one more thing I want to highlight here, especially for the graduate students here, because unless and until you are told expressly, students don't understand that something given, the projects for your assignment or your projects which you're submitting it to your course teacher, it is not right in case if you're just putting it from your Wikipedia or something like that. Something like cut copy paste is not accepted, right? It is an offense, right? There is copyright violation. So how do you do that? Because see, now the challenge is that students don't know. It is not that they do it deliberately, they don't know. They have to be properly informed. There's something called their softwares now. I think you all may be knowing about the Turnitin. There are so many which the UGC has come. So now they have taken this component, that is plagiarism, into a very serious note. So make sure you avoid it. Now the next question the students may be asking, ma'am, then how do we write? Because anything we can't write on our own. It's so difficult because we are new to the stream, and how do you expect us to write an entire research paper by our own? So I'm not saying that. See, I'm telling you, in case if you have taken a quote or if you have taken something, please make sure you acknowledge that in your footnotes, right? That doesn't amount to plagiarism. So when we talk about copyright, when we talk about plagiarism, when we talk about piracy, it doesn't mean that you can't take it, because obviously education purpose is always a, it can be used, educational purpose it can be used, but provided you acknowledge that. Unless you acknowledge that, if you don't put it as I said, if you don't acknowledge that in your footnote, it amounts to plagiarism. That is an offense, guys. So unless and until you make sure, and I think some students also come to me asking that, ma'am, when we are doing some case study method or some case commentary we are giving, or it might be sometimes we are analyzing the provisions. So majority of the times it is provisions and the case laws. That time also the plagiarism software will take it 100%, because you are putting it as it is in the law. I do agree that you cannot amend the sections, or you cannot amend the judgments, but make sure you put it in the quote. When you put it under the inverted quotes, then it will not amount to plagiarism. So that is one thing I can use, but you can always rewrite it in your own words. That I would also promote you to write in your research papers. So make sure be very very careful because of this, because this is going to be a very taken at a very serious note. I think in all the institutions, which I think many of the universities have their own Turnitin softwares or any other softwares. There are so many softwares which the universities have taken licensed, and they are putting all the projects, the soft copies whichever the students are sending, they are trying to figure out what is the similarity percentage in the software. So now, as I told, the society is dynamic, so we also have to change. So do the technology also is going hand in hand. So guys, you have to be much more very you have to do your research with authenticity, with integrity, then only you'll be called as a good researcher, right? Thank you so much. If there's any question, you all can ask me.
Thank you, ma'am. I think you have made the topic so easy. It's a quite complicated topic, but the way you have explained, I think we have got understood each and everything so well. And I think the students also have understood it clearly because everything was put in the PPT. And so I think they have a clear picture about research now. As the scope of research has increased so extensively at present, so I think learning there is very essential when they are in college itself. So I
Yes.
have a few questions, ma'am. Like personally, as the students keep on asking in the college, so I want you to address those questions to them. Like I have three major questions to you. First is like, as you have highlighted non-doctrinal legal research, can you suggest the students how they can more often use it? Can you just give some tips, or can you like explain once again, ma'am?
So yeah, when we talk about empirical study, so when we talk about non-doctrinal or empirical study, for example, say you want to do a legal research on the consumer behavior. As I told, the act is in place now. Like for example, before the act came into place, as I told, there was a major question as to how misleading advertisements were mainly impacting the factor. So you might be, in case if you're a student who is doing a law of torts or consumer protection is your subject, or your your course teacher might have given you a something like an empirical study on cab aggregators, the service which is given by the cab aggregators, because we saw recently there was a lot of mishap happening with the the Ola and Uber, right? The mishap happening, something like cab aggregators, you might be feeling that misleading advertisements with regard to your cosmetics, how far it is uh, you know the implementation of the regulatory authorities are doing. So something with regard to the society you can always do. It might be your observations, it might be your interview with any renowned persons. And I myself have done with regard to interview method with the state commission and the national commission members with regard to the cases decided on this topic. So whenever you if your faculty do gives you a proper support, I suggest that you can go for a empirical research, whether it might be, the topic, it depends on the topic. If it is feasible for you to go in the field visit, then you can always go. So it might be method of survey. Now again, your question might be that, ma'am, we are just students, we can't have that much of money to go to the survey, that is the field visit, we cannot do so. But always there's a method called as where you can do a survey with regard to your Google Forms itself. So there you don't have to because as now also the situation is like that pandemic, that you cannot go outside and do something like the way the surveys are done. So you can always make sure that you can do it through Google Forms, right? You have Survey Monkey, there are so many other tools. The tools and technology will help you to conduct the empirical study. So I suggest all the students, whoever is interested in empirical studies, they can do using these tools. Like in case of going out for the survey method, you can always interview them, take a teleconference with the take an appointment through them through mails. I don't think so nowadays everyone are open to, whenever it comes to legal research, and especially in national law universities, the judiciary or the adjudicatory officers are much more very coming openly for any sort of interview. Because when you say that you're a legal researcher and you're doing a PhD, you're doing a project on that, they will surely cooperate with you. And mainly as a researcher, I would say that mainly be very very you know uh, accurate, or you can say very specific as to what you want. If the person who is your respondent does, if he feels that you're not that clear with your concepts, then he may not cooperate with you. So be very specific as to what you want from that respondent. And you can do the questionnaire method, you can do an interview method. And also you can observe, if in case if everything after the pandemic, if everything goes fine, then you can also go for the courtrooms and also observe yourself, and you can come up with the conclusions. So I would suggest that for the students, in case if you're interested in empirical study.
Okay, ma'am. Another question, ma'am, is regarding the citations. So,
Yeah.
according to you, which method they should use, because they are young researchers? Can you
Yes.
just highlight a little bit about the citations, ma'am, because they often have points.
Firstly, I would like to say the students that citation is a must, because when I joined Ramaya, that is the first thing I told my students, that when I found their top assignments without citation, without page number, I was like lost. I told, guys, where are you? You people are already in the first year, second sem, and you don't know how to cite it. So you have to make sure the citation is followed. But which citation mode you're going to follow, again, it depends on the institutions. Because right now in NLS, they were following Oscula. So just make sure in your college it might be Oscula, it might be Blue Book. You can ask your course teacher. Many times it will be Blue Book only, the 20th edition, which is recently come, the recent edition. You can follow Blue Book. That's not a problem. And also make sure it is uniform mode of citation. There's a lot of things like IBID, Supra. You have to make sure you use those things. And and whenever you're putting a citation, you should whenever you're doing a research, make sure whenever you're taking any content, make sure you put it across in a different a file, because if you think that you'll do the citation mode later on, you will be in a mess. So citation, whenever you're doing a research, kindly quote which from where you have taken it, like the link which you have accessed, the date, the time, and the last day when you have accessed. Because sometimes the data, if sometimes it may be obsolete and they may be removed. So your last accession date should be reflecting in your research paper. That is something which is very important, and I highly suggest all the students to take care of that. Last accessed date and time is very, very important, guys.
Ma'am, your quick last question, ma'am, from my end.
Yeah.
Your quick suggestions to those young researchers so that they can, from today onwards, at least they take it very seriously.
Yeah, I think they have heard a lot of things from me. I would highly suggest, like, whatever I have told you, the intricacies of the ethics also, and the ethics which you have to follow with regard to legal research, please make sure you follow. And especially for the young budding students who are just joined the LLB, I would say, unless and until you follow these patterns, you will not flourish in your later on. I think because, see, unless this basic is very clear for you, you will not be able to participate in any moot courts. You will be not able to come up with your own memorials, because nowadays everything is there. The technology is a greatest tool, I can say. Unless you have technology along with you, you have great resources. Like your college might be having Heen Online, it might be having the Westlaw, Manuputra, the JSTOR. These are all there with you. The technology is completely with you, and the college is giving the full support. So I asked all the researchers, the student researcher, whoever is interested, take the maximum utilization of these and come up with a good, projects or good articles which will flourish in your entire lifetime. So that would be my suggestions.
Ma'am, there are two questions. I think this will be the last two questions you'll be addressing. So one question is from Veena TN, who is a participant. She is asking, how can we prepare hypothesis when we are doing comparative legal research?
Okay, so when you're doing a comparative legal research, obviously, you might be constraining either to India with a developed country, right? So you might be, you have to mainly focus on the problem which you are facing right now, like your research problem. For example, ma'am, you might be, something regarding, as I told, any transgender rights. So let us take a comparative study on transgenders rights. So here, firstly, your research problem will be that, why are the rights not equally done, equally given and envisaged in the act when we have a when we see it in the other countries. So initially your hypothesis will be focusing only with regard to Indian perspective. That will be your first hypothesis. Second hypothesis, then later you can bring it in a comparative, where you can say that because of the legal framework which is there in the developed countries. So whether, even if it is a comparative study, I would like to say that hypothesis have to be first constrained to your the domestic country, that is in India. Like, for example, as I told, transgender rights, obviously you will be mainly focusing on the rights of the transgender, because, like, for example, let me give you an example which I mainly personally feel, that transgender rights, in case if there is a rape of a transgender, it's only 6 months. But as well as, if you see the IPC, there's, you have a greater penalty, stringent laws, provisions when it is a rape of a girl, right? So why is the distinction between a transgender? So why are the hypothesis will be, what is the reason, cause and effect relationship which you'll be bringing in the domestic law, and later you can bring it forth in your comparative study. Later you can bring it that, because there's a strict penalty for any of the rights which has been infringed, transgender of a different jurisdiction, and that is the reason they have a greater protection and greater prohibition of any offense committed against the transgender. So ma'am, it doesn't depend upon whether it's a comparative or it's a domestic critical analysis of the own domestic country. You have to make sure the problem, the research problem mainly, is important for you to frame the hypothesis.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, one last question. A student wants to know, Kavita Christo. She wants to know that if she is referring something from a blog or from a web page and she has mentioned it in the footnote, will that amount to plagiarism? That is her question.
Uh, yeah, Kavita. So, Kavita, as you rightly asked, as I already mentioned, that you can take blogs, right? I don't define that because they all are your secondary source of information which you might be getting. Make sure you're quoting that, and also you quote it with your inverted commas, right? If you're putting anything in the inverted commas, it doesn't amount to plagiarism. As well as you're citing or you're acknowledging that in the footnote, it doesn't amount to plagiarism. But what happens is that let me tell you one more point. When you're talking about plagiarism, the software, how it operates, you should be also knowing that how the software operates is that if it finds the same if it finds the same words constantly for 2-3 times, it will start taking that as a plagiarism. It will start taking that it is a duplication of work. So make sure, even if you're citing any article, any blog in your footnote, make sure you are putting it in the inverted commas in the above. I'm not telling about the footnote, I'm telling you the above content, you have to put it in the footnote. Then it doesn't amount to plagiarism. But on the safer side, I would also tell you, Kavita, is that whenever you're doing that, make sure you're not putting as it is everything. If, for example, if you're taking a quote, or if you're taking a judgment, or if you're taking any provision, you have to quote it in both inverted commas open and inverted commas close. And that is something which you have taken from the source which you have taken which you have written in the footnote. I hope I'm clear with Kavita's question.
Yes, ma'am. I think we are done with the question and answer session. Ma'am, I think we can wind up the session. Mahesh sir?
Yeah.
I think Lokesh sir is there. Sir will be proposing the vote of thanks.
Yes, thank you, madam. Myself, Lokesh Reddy. I am assistant professor in law, ISBR Law College. On behalf of ISBR Law College, management, principal, faculty members, and non-teaching staff, I would like to express our sincere thanks to the Dr. Anita Patil Madam has given excellent coverage to the participant about the legal research and its importance to the present days for the students who are studying in the different law colleges. Thank you, madam. And I also wish to express my gratitude to the management, principal, teaching staff, and non-teaching staff of the ISBR Law College, providing me us to an opportunity for conducting this webinar. And last but not least, I would like to thank to all the participants who have participated. They spent their time, almost all for 1 hour, to attend this webinar. Thank you for one and all. Thank you very much. And I would like to thank to Mahesh sir and Bhargavi madam has taken the initiative to conduct this webinar. Thank you, sir. Thank you, madam.
Thank you so much for organizing this workshop. I would like to thank Bhargavi to organize and be the coordinator for the entire session. Thank you for coordinating the entire webinar, Bhargavi.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Mahesh sir, regarding the certificates.
Yes, this is to all the participants. Like we'll be sending you the certificates in about a week's time once the lockdown gets over and once the classes got college gets resumed. We'll be sending you all the certificates. These certificates will be mailed to you, and also the YouTube link of this entire session will be mailed to all the participants. Feedback forms will be mailed very shortly. So thank you so much for attending. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.
ISBR aims to prepare students for life, making them a leader. Welcome to the real world and real learning. Welcome to ISBR.